Hey there, I'm Adrienne, transformation coach and your go-to gal for navigating grief and loss. On this show, we're not shying away from tough conversations. Let's talk about how we're really feeling and how to show up in our lives even though so many hard things have happened. Loss and grief are tough topics, but witnessing each other's pain and getting really honest about what we want our lives to look like in our next chapter is the way forward. You're not broken. You deserve happiness. And even though you might not think that's possible, or even feel like your life is over, I'm here to show you that you can feel peace, purpose, and joy again. Let's talk about all things change, loss, and grief, and how to move forward so we can create a life we love. Welcome to the Living with Loss podcast. Hey there, I'm Adrienne. Welcome back to Living with Loss. Today, we're going to talk about overwhelm. And specifically, we're going to talk about 5 steps to simplify your life so you can find more peace. If you're feeling overwhelmed by a challenge in your life or maybe a big change, a loss, this episode is for you. We're going to focus on some practical, simple steps to bring you more peace and clarity in your everyday life. We're going to talk about the key stressors that might send you into that spiral of overwhelm and how you can take control of that. Talk about simplifying your routines for more ease and more flow. I'm going to talk about boundaries a little bit, setting and enforcing them, really to protect your peace. It's important to reconnect with what truly matters and let go of what doesn't. At the end of the day, I think we all want a life that feels more peaceful, more intentional, more aligned, more like us, more living in our lives and less stressing about our lives. So we're going to cover a few different things today. And really what I want by the end of this is for you to have some easy to implement strategies that are going to help you. Maybe you implement everything I say, or maybe you kind of pick and choose what might work for you best. Try some different things out, experiment with it. I hope that you do try at least one of them, but we'll get there. So the first thing that you want to do if you're feeling overwhelmed, or even if you're not and you want to get this awareness going, first thing you want to do is identify your overwhelming triggers, your activations. And by that, I mean, typically, if you're feeling overwhelmed, that's going to come from a few different things. You're juggling too many roles, you've got too many responsibilities, you're saying yes to too many things, or you've got some unprocessed emotions. And that's where the grief piece comes in. A lot of times with grief, we think we've worked through it, or we know it's kind of there, but those emotions, they're simmering just beneath the surface. Sometimes we know it's going to bring them up, and sometimes we don't. You may feel overwhelmed for a variety of different reasons, whether related to your grief or whether it's not related to your grief, but it's really important to recognizing what's causing those feelings of overwhelm, whether it is the grief, maybe it's big life change. One of the big things that happens, especially after loss, is we try to keep up these routines and these responsibilities from before that really no longer serve us. So maybe you're doing these things that really just aren't aligned to who you are, who you need to be in this season, and you're doing too much, maybe. Or, like I said, just out of alignment and it doesn't feel good. So it's leading to these signs, these symptoms, these feelings of overwhelm. So, in order to really identify what's causing the feeling of overwhelm, the thing that I like to do is if I start feeling that, like, I can't do this, it's too much, I journal about it. Taking just 5 minutes at the start of your day to jot down the top 3 things that are causing you the most stress or the most overwhelm. When you kind of lay them out on paper, you can see what they fit under. Is it the responsibilities, the emotions, the unprocessed grief, saying too yes too much? You could see right there, okay, if these are the things that are stressing me out, these are the things that are making me feel overwhelmed, and this is what it's related to, that at least gives you awareness of the pattern, and it will help you see where to focus your attention first. And this is a super important step because you might think you know why you feel this way, but sometimes when things are spinning around in your head, it's not quite as clear as we think it might be. So getting it down on paper is super important. If you identify where the overwhelm is coming from, then you can understand, okay, where do I need to start simplifying my life? So the second thing you want to consider, once you've identified those activations, what's causing the overwhelm, what's causing the stress, the second thing is you want to simplify your priorities. So if everything feels like a priority, spoiler alert, nothing is. It's true though. You can't prioritize everything. You can't do everything. Typically, you're going to do one thing at the expense of another, to some extent anyways, right? If you have all the balls up in the air At least some of them are going to fall. And you got to be okay with that. And when you're not okay with that and you try to kind of make it all keep going, trying to juggle everything, that's where those feelings of stress, that overwhelm comes in because quite simply, it's not possible to do everything, especially if you're going through a difficult time in your life. So I would suggest narrow your focus to 1 to 2 things that matter most each day. Now, if you're doing really well, maybe that's a top 3 list. I have a daily 3 right now, but when I'm very stressed, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I reduce that to 1 to 2 things. What are the 2 most important things for me, for my life? What is the priority for today? And quite frankly, if it is not on that list, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't get taken care of, it doesn't get my attention, that's just how it is. You got to let it go. You have to let go of that need to do it all because, again, we can't. So, if you just really hone in on the 2 things that matter the most, whether it's taking care of yourself, whether it's the needle movers in a project that you're working on, whether it's taking care of the kids, whatever it might be for you, focus on those 1 to 2 things. What are the priorities for today? And I'm not saying you won't get to scratch the surface with anything else, but understand up front if it's not the 1 to 2 things, it's probably not going to get your full energy. It's probably not going to get your full attention. And if at all possible, just completely let it go, especially if you're going through a difficult time. Again, for me right now, where I'm at in life, I have a daily 3. It just gives me like a laser sharp focus on what matters. And I know by looking at that list what my priorities are for that day. And having that super sharp focus is very helpful, especially when I'm going through something difficult. If I've got stress, again, if it's stress is really high, the list drops down a bit, but day to day, no more than 3. You can't prioritize everything. And that was kind of a tough lesson for me to learn because I like the idea that I can do everything and do it perfectly. But, with age comes wisdom, and you figure out, well, that's ridiculous. So if you're wondering, okay, how can I decide on the priorities? At the beginning of the week, maybe that's Sunday night for you, maybe it's Monday morning, whenever you want it to be. At the beginning of the week, write down the 1 or 2 tasks or goals that truly matter for the next few days, maybe through the week. Everything else is secondary. Like if you had a great week, these 1 to 2 things would get done. What are those things? Like the big overarching goals. And if you focus on that, you write those down, then every day you can ask yourself, are my priorities in line with these 1 to 2 things that I want to achieve by the end of the week? So it's really just simplifying. You go into the week knowing what matters. And then every day you can line up what you're doing, where you're putting your attention, what you're focusing on with those 2 things that you say matter. The purpose here is to really simplify your priorities because that will bring you clarity and reduce mental clutter. When you feel clear, when you don't have that mental clutter, you don't feel as stressed, you don't feel as overwhelmed. So, first, you want to identify what's causing the feelings. The second thing, you want to simplify your priorities. So, that brings us to the third thing, set boundaries to protect your energy. Boundaries are not about shutting people out. It's about protecting your energy and creating space for peace. It's about protecting your peace, really. Jenna Kutcher actually just recently said on her podcast, the Gold Digger podcast, that I don't set boundaries to keep people out of my life. I set boundaries to keep me in my life. Meaning she's setting her priorities and putting very strict boundaries around what matters to her. For her, she talks about in the episode being in a season where parenting, that's the top priority for her. If it's going to take away time from her family and it's outside of, say, the regular workday, she's probably going to be a no for her right now. Thinking about boundaries in that way might be really helpful. It's about keeping yourself in your life. It's not about shutting anything out, protecting your peace. A big way to do this, or the main way to do this, major way to do this, the most helpful way to do this, that makes it feel less stressful, is learning to say no without guilt. And this is a big one, especially for women, I know. Because I was the queen of, sure, I'll be there Saturday, knowing full well as I said that I was not going to go because I just didn't have the capacity to do that. But rather than say no and be uncomfortable for like that brief second, it was a lot easier for me to say yes. And then Saturday would roll around and I'd have to figure that out when it came. But in that moment, it was easier to say yes than no. And when I was really young, I would say yes, even though I wanted to say no, and then I would make myself do it. At this point in my life, if something is a no for me, it's just a no for me. My reasoning is my business, not anybody else's business. So I don't actually really feel the need to provide an excuse or a reason why. If you want to say anything, you could say, I really appreciate the thought that you're thinking of me, that you invited me for the opportunity, whatever that might be that they're asking of you. I really appreciate you thinking of me, but unfortunately, it's going to be a no for me at this time. I'm prioritizing time with my family. This is in no way a reflection of you or the project, but this is just where I'm at right now. Again, thank you so much for thinking of me. I hope we can collaborate together in the future. Or if it's, not like a work related thing with a friend, they want to go out Saturday night. I can't do Saturday. I've been super drained this week. Saturday night is going to be my me time where I'm going to be in my PJs and I'm reading a good book. Really appreciate the invite to go out and I hope we can catch up soon. Something like that doesn't have to be, oh God, they're going to be so mad or disappointed in me. I mean, maybe some people might be, but honestly, a lot of people are kind of wrapped up in themselves. So if you're not available or you can't do it, that's cool. We read into situations or make them so much more difficult and convoluted than they often are. So that first step when you're setting boundaries is just learn how to say no without guilt. Just a simple no. No explanation needed, or you could say no with a thank you. It's up to you how you want to frame it, but remove the guilt if you can. Work on that. So I want you to identify an area where you feel overstretched right now. Maybe it's your time, your emotional energy, your commitments. And practice saying no this week by politely declining something that feels like a drain. And use that time to take care of yourself. You could say, thank you, but I'm unable to commit to that right now. Super simple. Thank you, but I'm unable to commit to that right now. So practice it. If you're looking at your calendar and you're like, oh, I've got too many things going on, move some things around, cancel some things, or if anything new pops up, just say no. And see how you feel when you do that. Maybe write about it if you feel like it. It's important to understand that boundaries are a form of self-care. And really all they're doing is allowing you to focus on what matters. It's allowing you to take ownership and responsibility of your energy. If you feel tired, if you feel overwhelmed, if you feel stressed, it's up to you to set the boundaries to protect your peace so you don't feel that way. So the fourth thing in this getting out of overwhelm is to incorporate small restorative habits. So peace doesn't come from like this big sweeping massive change, though, you know, staying in an overwater bungalow in the Maldives for a couple weeks might be nice. Um, Day to day, probably not practical. So think about it just in the idea of small, consistent actions. If you do these things regularly that bring you peace, you're going to feel more peace. The two non-negotiable habits that I have right now, and I've mentioned them on this podcast before, I've mentioned them on social media, is journaling and taking a walk. Minimum 15 minutes of each every day. I like to do a walk and some journaling in the morning, and I like to do it again in the evening. For me, it just sets the stage for a good day. Anything that's like rumbling around in my mind, I get it out. I walk, kind of get the energy flowing, feel really good. And same thing at night, kind of walk off my meal and I write about some stuff. So that way I get it out of my head and it's not stressing me out when I lay down to sleep. So I would say figure out two daily habits, even one that are going to have a huge impact on your mental health, meaning your mood, how you feel, your emotions, right? It doesn't have to be this big, crazy morning routine, 45-minute thing. Just think of one or two things that bring you peace and make it a point to do them. I would start by dedicating, say 10 to 15 minutes for that habit or for each habit. And that might look like taking a walk around your neighborhood like I do, 10 minutes of mindful breathing, putting on a guided meditation, maybe 10, 15 minutes of journaling about how you're feeling, or just anything you want to get out, stream of consciousness, find some prompts online. I've got prompts on the website. I always have a prompt that goes with every episode. Just take that time for yourself. Maybe you like to paint, maybe you like Legos. I like both of those things. That's why I bring them up. On days where I have more time, I'll do some painting or I'll take some time for Legos. And that stuff is just super relaxing. And it's meditative in a form because it forces you to be where your feet are, meaning you have to focus on what you're doing so your mind can't spiral away from you. So just figure out, like I said, one to two things and make it a habit to make time and space for those things every day. That is giving you more peace while you're doing it. It's setting you up to continue to feel that way throughout your day. And truly, when you have small, manageable habits, again, they don't have to be these grand sweeping changes, they don't have to be these long routines. When you have these small, manageable habits, they're more sustainable and they truly will create more calm in your life. I say this because I know it, because again, journaling and walking regularly, it has been a game changer for me and for my mental health. The last thing on this list for the 5 ways to get out of overwhelm, to simplify your life, to find more peace, that fifth thing is going to be letting go of perfection. Trying to do everything perfectly, it is a huge cause of overwhelm because perfect isn't realistic. So if you're trying to reach a standard that's not realistic, you're just going to drive yourself crazy because it's not possible. You're always going to find something wrong with it. You're always going to nitpick yourself. So if you let go of that standard, you automatically like relax the conditions that you have to meet. It's okay if everything doesn't get done perfectly or even at all. If it's not like an absolute must, let it go if you have to. You want to focus on progress, not perfection. So if you have something that usually activates your perfectionism, whether it's cooking dinner, maybe it's cleaning, it's responding to emails, getting to inbox zero every day, give your permission to do it good enough and walk away. It's just good enough. And that's only if it landed on that priority list, right? Like we're keeping things simple this week. If it's good enough, let it be good enough and be done with it. Move on to the next thing or take some time for yourself. So I say this when I was the straight A kid. If my projects were not up to my standard of perfection, which were absurd and unrealistic and crazy making, I literally would throw them away and start over. I could remember a diorama being due about, I don't even know, one of the wars in our time, but I was in elementary school. So we made these dioramas and we were supposed to, have this like little teeny tiny presentation, 5 minutes to explain a diorama and where it fit into the context of history. And it was the night before, and I had been working. It's not like I left it for the night before. I had been working on this thing for days. And I looked at it and I was like, this just doesn't look good. And I threw it away. And then I had to find a new shoebox and like new craft supplies. And, my mom was just like, what are you doing? Like, it's fine. And I'm like, it's not fine. And I'm all upset and I'm crying. But that's like, I put so much pressure on myself and I had started doing that at such a young age. And it carried into my adult life for a long time. But now I've kind of just let that go. It's taken some practice. Yeah, it's not to say I don't have high standards because I do. But sometimes just getting it done, like that has to be the goal, the B minus work, right? Like running a business, doing all of these things. I'm the one doing them. So sometimes, like, we just got to get them done and move on to the next thing because we can get hung up on the tiny details. And for me, knowing that it's done is better than perfect, that's worth it to me. That protects my peace. I'm not going to spiral. I'm not going to hold myself to some unrealistic standard. I'm not going to pour hours into something to say it's not good enough and scrap it. That's not going to happen at this point. I like to think about it. If I'm using time and energy, what is it costing me? Meaning, if I'm using time and energy on this podcast, say, what is that costing me? Okay, well, it's costing me time to work on other things in my life, other things in my business. I'm not accepting any phone calls, so any calls that come in, I may miss them. It's costing me close to an hour of my time for the recording, the getting ready, and then at least another hour for the editing and the uploading and working on the website that goes with it. So it's costing me for sure time and energy. But to me, it's worth it. It's not perfect. No, none of these episodes are. That whether it's I make mistakes when I'm speaking, there's, issues with sound quality, whatever it might be. I try to have a high standard, but is it perfect? It's not. Because if I spent even more than the 2+ hours per week on this, I'm not sure that I would be willing to sacrifice the other stuff that I would have to take time away from, right? Like that would cause me to have to reconfigure my schedule quite a bit and figure out like, okay, where can I make space for this? Think about it in terms of that. If you're using time and you're using energy on this one thing, what's it costing you elsewhere? When you put it in that context, the done is better than perfect. It becomes an easy answer. Like it becomes obvious. You're not letting it go, you're getting it done. And we're moving on to the next thing without taking away from all of the other things that matter to us in our lives. For me, at this point in my life, I protect my peace above just about everything else. That's it. That's period. End of story. I'm not getting stressed and spiraling. I'm unavailable for overwhelm. That's just kind of where I'm at. Not to say I don't start to go there, but I am able to kind of talk myself down off of that and revert to my tools and my tactics to get out of that place because, again, protecting my peace, feeling mentally calm, and like that's important to me. That is a priority to me. So I do what I have to do every day to kind of stay in that frame of mind as much as possible. And when things come up, got to work through them and kind of get back to that place of peace. So let go of perfection. All of that to say, went on a bit of a tangent there. If you let go of perfection, you're going to reduce the amount of overwhelm you're experiencing. You're reducing the pressure, you're reducing the stress levels, the expectation. So just let go of perfection. Don't even, consider that a realistic standard at this point because it's not. So for journal prompt this week, it'll be on the website in the show notes. What's one area in my life that feels overwhelming, and what's one small action I can take this week to simplify it? So it's kind of doing that whole week glance, looking at what in your life is overwhelming, and identifying an action item to simplify. I suggest you use some of the takeaways from this episode for the 5 steps to simplify your life, find more peace. The first step being identify your overwhelm triggers. Second, simplify your priorities. Third, set boundaries to protect your energy. Fourth, incorporate small restorative habits. Fifth, let go of perfection. Under every one of those, I gave you an example or a tip that you could do for that step. So try at least one of them out this week. I encourage you really to try and put all of them into practice if you can, but really start with one and just see what kind of difference that makes for you. I don't know if you've been to my website lately, but I wanted to let you know that I have a new quiz up. It's all about finding your best care strategy for when you're grieving. It's just a super simple 5-question quiz, and it will give you personalized strategies that are rooted in grace and self-compassion. Again, just 5 quick questions. You just put your name and email in, get your results. They're very personalized and very specific to your responses. So if you're interested in that, pop on over to my website. There's a banner right at the top and you'll see it. Take the quiz. I don't know about you. I'm a 90s kid, born in 85. So 90s kid, love me some quizzes. So yeah, hop on over to the website and take that. I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you so much. I hope this has been helpful for you. And as always, find me over on social media and send me a comment, send me a DM. Let me know how this episode helped you or how you felt after you implemented any of it. I always love to hear from my listeners. Thank you so much, and we'll talk soon. That's it for today's episode, my friends. Thanks so much for joining me on the Living with Loss podcast. Please like and follow the show so you don't miss an episode. If you're looking for more grief support, grab my free guide, 5 essential tools for immediate relief from grief, even if you don't think that's possible. Head on over to adriancrowley.com and download it. Remember, you may not have chosen all the changes or losses in your life, but you get to choose what happens next. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Until then, have a fantastic week.